Hello and welcome to the IT Journeys and Convos podcast. And I'm your host, Olumide Ajala. Today I have with me a very special guest. Her name is Laura Brandenburg. If you have been in business analysis or you know anything about business analysis, you know that Laura is the number one name that comes to mind at any point in time. I first came across Laura in about 2017 or 2018 when she launched her book, How to Start a Business Analyst Career. And that was my first encounter with Laura. And over the years, we've seen her grow in leaps and in bounds. And she is definitely an authority in the business analysis space, helping people get into business analysis and also leading the charge with the new ACBA certification for business analysts. So thank you very much, Laura. Thank you for taking the time to join this recording today.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's a true honor, and I'm so glad that you found my book back in the day. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so just let me just do a quick fun moment, right? So I had always been I had been in business consulting. I've been in tech for a couple of years, and at some point I realized that what I was doing didn't have a title as such. And then I came across some courses in a university in the UK, and I found the course was titled Business Analysis, right? I went through their modules and everything they were doing, and I said, yeah, this looks like what I'm doing. This looks like what I've been doing all my career, right? And in doing more searching and more reading up about it, I came across the IIBA, and of course, then I came across your book. So I want to use the opportunity, just a few minutes, Laura, for you to share with us, just a background about yourself, how you got into business analysis, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you for that. My entry into business analysis was not necessarily intentional. I was in a quality assurance role at the time, and I was asking a lot of questions. I had actually built a new aspect of quality assurance. All of the QA engineers were really focused on the functional piece, and I was working on the data piece, which allowed me in a publishing company to work with a bunch of stakeholders. And I just started asking a bunch of questions about the requirements until one day a business analyst, or they will call systems analyst, she's like, we have a new position opening up in our department. Would you like to apply? I was like, no, QA is so busy. And she's like, Laura, this job is like a lot more money and probably a lot more career potential too. So I really need you to think about it. And I was really glad she pushed me a bit. It ended up being like QA was fun, but once I got into business analysis, it was like everything that I had always wanted to do in my work made sense. It just felt like I had landed somewhere meaningful and important. And I continued to have business analysis related roles in 3 different companies from that point forward, until I eventually left corporate and started bridging the gap, started consulting as a business analyst. That was about 15 years ago. And really kind of wasn't intentionally going to be a training company. I just really wanted to consult a bit and write a bit about what I knew, what I'd experienced. People kept asking me for some sort of training, some sort of support in getting to the next step. And I wrote the book that you talked about, How to Start a Business Analyst Career, but I realized people needed something more. And that really brought me to starting to do training at Bridging the Gap. And what's always differentiated how I wanted to do training was to keep it really practical, really hands-on. To me, it was like the skills that I needed to actually be successful, but encouraging people to couple that with on-the-job application. So they're applying those skills on the job and have some way of getting support and feedback around that, so that, part of learning the skill is going through the course and sort of being absorbed in the knowledge, but you really learn it when you go out and do it. And so I want to empower people to go out and apply to work and get the experience. And that's what we see move careers forward. So really excited about our topic today because this skill set and business process analysis is often the entry point for people who aren't yet BAs too. Yeah.
Exactly, Laura. I was about to quickly segue into that,
Yeah.
right? And say, one of the really important skills that differentiates business analysis or differentiates business analysts, right, is our ability to analyze processes, right? And doing that starts with understanding what processes are, being able to map them, being able to document them, being able to model processes. For business analysts, this is something that should be standard, right? Every business analyst should have this under their career tool belt. Now, for those who are not familiar, those who really don't understand what's going on, right? Can you explain what business process modeling is and why it's significant in the IT industry?
For sure. So business process modeling is really a way of understanding the flow of work in a business. And, why do people and systems within the business, what do they do and why do they do it? And how do those actions support the outcomes that a business is trying to create? So when I think about a business process, it is a repeatable series of steps that can be completed by people, sometimes also with technology, to achieve an outcome, right? But it's repeatable. So it's not a project. Like as business analysts, we work on a lot of projects, and those projects probably improve processes, but the processes live after the project is over and they continue to run, whether it's multiple times a day or once a year, but they continue to run in an organization on a consistent basis. And so the way we teach it at Bridging the Gap, we teach a combination of visual modeling and textual modeling. So the visual would be a business process diagram, also called a process map, also called a workflow diagram, also called a BPMN diagram, depending on who you're talking to. So just a visual way of showing the steps in the process. And then we teach a textual document that captures a lot more details about each step, the business rules, the exceptions, role delineation, kind of just helps you really flesh out that process into a lot of detail. So I consider business process modeling to be like an umbrella that includes all of that and often would be looking at multiple processes in an organization.
Well, thank you, Laura. That was a real great way to capture, right, the essence of business process modeling. Now, a question that so my audience spans people across the IT industry.
Yes.
And one question that I think people would always ask is, how does this business process modeling, how does it contribute to improving efficiency in our organizations, right?
Yeah.
I know that in a lot of places, they just, do the work, and some people come with suggestions, and then, we try it out to see how it works, right? And it works or it doesn't work, right? So why do we want to spend time doing this? And how is it going to contribute to the efficiency in the organization?
What I find and what I see a lot of BAs find is once you start analyzing just the current state process, you think everybody understands the process, right? I don't put too bad in the situation, but they actually don't, right? Until you start to get all of those people in a room and say, is this what you do? Like one person does it one way, another person does it another way, or the handoff is between those departments is inconsistent, and you kind of figure out why, right? Or the exceptions aren't handled well. So I think we go to the, like, it improves efficiency just by creating awareness and understanding. And then also once you understand the current state, you can start to see where the opportunities to improve are. This is where, as technology professionals, we can start to look for ideas of, well, where can we automate? Where are there gaps today? Where could we streamline the work? Like, where can we use technology to make this easier or more efficient, or make sure the handoff happens, or create checks and balances? So technology can then support that business process, but until we understand how the business works, we're just trying out features, and those features may or may not actually improve things. And so we can kind of get into like that, let's just try this, try this, try this, because we haven't really looked at the full picture and the big picture and the root cause issues.
when you were talking, right, you spoke about systems, integrating systems and improving
Yes.
systems, right? How does business process modeling, how does business process management, how does it help us with integration of technology into business processes, right? So you have a business right now, you have technology that we're using. How does business process modeling help us, right, with technology we use?
Yeah, one of my favorite things, this is a little different than what you asked, but one of my favorite things is when you find a process efficiency that doesn't require technology whatsoever, right? Sometimes it's just, oh, we're doing this a way that doesn't make sense, or we're doing something that's not created anymore, right? Or not needed anymore. It's not actually delivering the outcome that is needed by the business. And we can just eliminate it instead of automating a bunch of work. But often, as you start to understand the process, you can find places where IT can help automate. Or we see a lot of process work these days where companies, there are still a lot of processes that are managed on spreadsheets. Like, I don't want to say that that world is gone. It's certainly not gone. But also another area of work for BAs are, we already put in place an ERP system 10, 15, 20 years ago that's no longer working quite well for our business. And we're implementing a new ERP system or a new software system. And so we need to understand how we, like, the processes in place around the old system to figure out what to move over to the new system and how to move that over in a way that's going to benefit the business and actually make their work easier instead of harder. So I think that's kind of how we integrate it with IT.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Laura. Um, what are some best practices for creating and maintaining business process models to ensure their relevance and accuracy over time? You spoke about a situation where you've put up a system, it's been there 15 years, right? Things are not,
Yeah.
working anymore. So how do we, you know, how do we maintain our processes to make sure that they're always relevant and that they're always accurate?
Yeah. Maybe it's just the people I work with, but most of the people I work with have not, like, I wish that there was some process models for our current state, right? It always seems like we're starting from scratch again. So that is just a reality. And I just want to share that for people who are like, oh my goodness, my organization doesn't have any of this, right? And some organizations are really formal and do have a lot of great process documentation, but the reality is that a lot don't. But I think when we think about crafting our process models for longevity, like, how can we keep those simple and readable and digestible? So I often coach people to make sure it's readable on, like, one computer screen or one printed piece of paper, right? And that leaves room for that process model to grow a bit over time. But it means you have to kind of split things apart from the beginning or start with a high level process and break it into sub processes. So you have some of that scalability. And you also need a process to review your processes if you really are talking about the longevity, because that is going to change over time. So what sort of governance process would you put in place to look at it every 6 months or once a year, and review that process with the business, talk about anything that's changed, and update that documentation? A lot of organizations don't fund that kind of work, but if you really want something that's going to last and still be useful in 15 years, it's not going to just stay the same. It's not going to be a static process that stays the same. You need to have a process for updating it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, Laura. And in your experience, um, do you see a lot of people, a lot of organizations doing this afresh, or do you see a lot of maintenance going on with processes?
I see a lot more people doing things fresh. Yeah. So processes that have been put in place for a long time, but that either have out of date documentation, no documentation, or very little documentation, like incomplete documentation. So the BA trying to pull what exists together, but revalidating that with the business.
Right, right. So, what tools or methodologies would you recommend for effective business process modeling and documentation?
Yeah, I always teach people to use the tools that are placed in their organization, right? So you don't have to bring something like the tool you have is probably going to be a great place to start. And so, like, in terms of the hurdle of getting over, like getting into it, like you don't want the tool to be the barrier, right? So that there are great tools that allow for more sophisticated modeling. And if you're looking for the next level, like that can be a discussion, but like at the foundation, it could be a tool like Visio. I love Lucid Chart, which is more of a web-based tool. Glyphy is a great tool. Like there's just so many tools out there that are pretty affordable, allow you to get started really quickly, and are going to give you a good starting point. And then think about as well how you can have space for those textual details. So, ideally that visual modeling tool would integrate with some sort of a textual content like a wiki or a document management system so that you can have those two go together, would be the ideal world. But start with what you have.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, this leads me to another question entirely on
Yeah.
methodology, right? It's related,
Yeah.
but let's talk about a little about methodology. Someone had asked the question to BPMN or not to BPMN, right? And I'd like to have your take on this, right?
Oh, yeah. I have very strong opinion. But go ahead. Did you have more to say?
Right. So what I wanted to say is, when people are starting out as business analysts, they want to know, should I learn BPMN or not? Right.
Right.
And how important do you think BPMN is today? And what's the relevance in the industry today?
Yeah. So I I teach, like we're getting ready to host a workshop and I came up with 7 elements of notation that we're teaching, right? And a couple of those are like activity steps and swim lanes and decision diamonds, which I think come from BPMN, but are not the full-fledged notation of BPMN. What I have found, and I've done a little bit of work with BPMN, I don't know if I know means a BPMN expert, but when you start to get more sophisticated with your models like that, it's harder to get business stakeholder input because you're training them on what all the syntax means and what the notations mean, and you might get confused about it yourself, and so you're like, well, what does it mean when I did this like little thing here? And so really, I mean, most of what we need to do can be modeled using some pretty simple notations. And unless your organization is using BPMN because you're generating code from your business processes or you have a methodology around it that is actually leveraging that notation, I don't think you need to use it as a BA. And also the foundational skills you learn and just putting together a very simple process flow diagram will set you up to be able to apply those things when you need them and learn those BPMN elements when you need them. So that's my take on it. I think it's like really needs to be on an as needed basis versus like the default. I don't know. What's your take on that? Yeah.
um, so I think I would lean, towards what you're saying, because at the end of the day, as business analysts, we have to carry our stakeholders along.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that they understand the things that we're presenting to them, right?
Yeah.
We're communicating something to them when we're mapping processes. We're telling them this is how it's done or this is how it will be done,
Yeah.
right? So we want to focus more time on that message rather than teaching them how to map, right? Or how to read the map,
Yeah.
right? So absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say something for the listeners, right? You're going to hear a lot about when to use these types of maps and the different types of maps when you register for the business process mapping course, right? Which we'll tell you more about at the end of this
Mm.
at the end of this discussion. All right. So, what do you see as future trends in business process modeling within the IT industry?
Yeah, I think one of the trends, we talked a little bit about is this it's still an emerging practice of the business process model actually generating code or generating some sort of system that supports the process. That tends to be a more sophisticated way. That's still emerging and developing. But what is exciting, I think, for a broader number of VAs is just how can we leverage generative AI, right, in all of this process. And like Usage Chart today has the capability of typing in a bit of your process or your domain, and it would generate a draft process diagram for you. So I think that a really cool way to think about it. Like, how can I use AI to give myself a start? So I'm not starting from that blank piece of paper. I also think thinking about what questions you could use, like a generative AI tool like Chat GPT, like what questions would you ask Chat GPT as a stakeholder to think about like what exceptions or exception paths or benefits of the process, like ways of gathering information so you can go into a stakeholder meeting more informed and have some better questions. And I would love a tool, I'm sure somebody's working on it, that would allow you to create a messy diagram and then just have it all get straightened out. Right? I don't know how much time BAs have probably wasted on getting their boxes, their lives straight. Like I really think we need to be working on higher level skills and what is in the process and with our stakeholders, and like the tool should be making things look pretty for us. So I hope somebody's working. I'm sure they are.
There might be something there, Laura. There might be something.
Yes, like make it look
Yeah.
pretty.
So, are there any specific skills or certifications that are related to business process modeling that professionals should consider, um, that they should consider acquiring to enhance their competitiveness, right?
Yeah,
Beyond
I
just
this
putting
is
it on
such
my
an interesting.
resume, just something that shows that, hey, I know how to do this.
Yeah, so that's two different ways of thinking about it. So when I think about the skills of process modeling, like you need to know how to put together a good process map and a good process document, right? But like and we've alluded to this a little bit, like the more important aspect is how do you actually work with people? How do you ask questions to make sure that that process has the right information? And I think as we think about differentiation, that's a huge differentiator for BAs. Being so comfortable with the notation that you're using, again, not a sophisticated notation, but that you could draw a process map on the fly, on a whiteboard physically if you're in the room with somebody, or electronically if you're screen sharing and doing a virtual meeting, so that you can actually model as people are talking to you and show them the results of the conversation and sort of build that process map or process model together. So it's just that means the notation is really almost second nature, and you have a really strong process mindset. You're like thinking in the process so that you can focus your energy in that meeting on listening and and modeling and kind of figuring out how to place the information you're hearing into a process map as you go. And those are some of the like the next level skills I think to be thinking about as a VA is it's just the notation has to be second nature so that you can really like focus on the interaction and the collaboration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to quickly jump into a few questions on career advancement,
Yeah.
right? And so one thing that affects a lot of people, is when they're applying for jobs or when they're seeking promotions, right? How does one actively or rather effectively communicate the value proposition of their expertise in business process modeling to prospective employers or decision makers, right? So not beyond just saying, "Oh, I developed process maps." I develop current state and future state process maps, right? How do you communicate that value
Yeah.
to a potential employer or to leadership so that you're able to get a promotion?
It's such a good question because we get so focused on the how and the what we do and we lose track of the why. So as you're going through your process improvement work, paying attention to what benefits you generate, right? What are the hours saved, the costs saved, the revenue generated from this process or increased profit? Like, what's the actual outcome? And you might not always have hard data about, like, you might not know exactly how many hours that you could estimate. You might not know exactly what the cost savings is, but you could quantify that in a way or speak to the kinds of costs that you save so that you have that benefit. And I think because BA is such a hands-on role, you need to also be able to speak to what you specifically contributed towards that outcome. Because there's probably a sponsor of that project that also has that number on their resume, right? But you, like, how many stakeholders did you work with to get them aligned, and how unaligned were they when you started working with them, right? What was the complexity of navigating and negotiating their different ideas about what the process should be? How complex was the process? How many systems did it touch? How many departments did it touch? Like, how did you build trust and break down information silos? So just being able to speak to your specific contribution that enabled that outcome really shows like the value add that you bring as a business analyst. And so that can go in your resume, the process mapping and the current future state almost just becomes like a little bit in a bigger sentence that's talking about the outcome you created.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much, Laura. I think that's a really good tip which you've shared there, and I know a lot of people will be interested to hear this. Now, my next question, it's a kind of cheeky question because I know you're going to answer it, right? Which is, what resources or learning pathways would you recommend for individuals who want to stay competitive in the field of business process modeling? So the ball is on your court.
Thank you. I hope it's okay that I talk about our own thing at Bridging the Gap.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do have a training program at Bridging the Gap called the Business Analyst Blueprint, and one of the 4 modules, so there's 4 modules in that program, and one of them is dedicated completely to business process analysis, and it speaks both to the tactical skills we talked about, like how to put it together, but also how do you actually discover what this is with stakeholders? How do you figure out what to improve? So that's definitely an option. I have a ton of free training videos on my website, bridgingthegap.com, and on YouTube. And I also have a free business process template. And if you're able to put links with the show notes, I'm happy to get you that link. Or if anybody's listening and wants to DM me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to send you that via LinkedIn as well, the way to download that.
Absolutely great. So do you want to tell us more about your upcoming business process modeling course?
Oh, right. So in addition to that, if you are listening to this when it comes out on May 15th, I'm hosting a business process mapping workshop, and that will be a 3-hour workshop where I will walk you through step by step creating a business process map. You'll have opportunities to do breakouts and get some peer review feedback on your process map. And then we'll come back together and kind of digest all of that and get feedback from me on some of the participant process maps as well. So I'm really excited. We had our first interactive workshop, similar one, on use cases in February. And just the energy and the community, and people really wrote a use case in those 3 hours and came away with like a tangible thing. And that's what I love to see, is people actually applying the skills. So this is like show up and map a process, not show up and learn how to map a process. So we'll be doing it together, and I'm excited about it. Thank you so much for making sure I didn't forget about that.
Thank you, Laura. And if you're listening to this, if you register before the 30th of April, you're going to get $100 off. Right? So
yes,
go register right now for this course. It's 3 hours, and it's really going to be amazing. And Laura is top of mind when it comes to business analysis, right? The skills that you will learn. So one of the last speakers I interviewed, he spoke a lot about investing in yourself. He spoke a lot about investing in your skills, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be you taking a certification, right? But in those skills that you need to succeed in your career, right? Take a course, right? You want to learn business process mapping? Take this course. It's just 3 hours, right? But it's something that you're going to take with you throughout your career, and it's really going to help you elevate yourself,
Yeah.
right? So that's really is the summary of the program, right? So Laura, do you have any final thoughts or advice you'd like to share with my audience regarding the importance of business process modeling and just general career advice as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So one piece, especially when it comes to business process mapping, like this is often, I think of it as like the gateway skill, right? So if you are not yet a business analyst and you want to be one, like there are a gazillion business processes you could map. Like you can map a process you do at home. You can map your own process in your work, no matter what kind of work you're doing. You have something that you're doing consistently day to day or week to week. But ideally, you could even look at a piece that interacts with another department so you could kind of work with them to make sure the process is working for them. And I've just seen so many times people do that and they look at like, Laura, this is not that big of a deal, but you do it and you showcase it. And then people say, we want more of that. Like we need this in our organization. And all of a sudden people start coming to you to do more of it. And TA roles tend to take off in that regard. So if you are looking to start a BA career, like this is a great skill set to start with. It just tends to like leapfrog you into the role. And when you are practicing as a BA, I've also seen the reverse. We can get so heads down on like what a software needs to do, right? And then we're like, but our stakeholders aren't answering our questions or we're like spinning our wheels. And so taking that step back and mapping a business process can also be a great win and helps differentiate you from a software or more technical focused BA role and be a true partner to business and really elevate your stakeholder relationships. So those are like, if I was going to leave you with one thing, it would be to just get started and try a new skill. Like you said, I think the investment that you make in your skills and just whether or not you're taking a course, the investment you make in constantly pushing yourself to just do that one thing that makes you uncomfortable is what sets you apart as a BA. Thank you for having me here. I can talk on and on for like my final thought. I think I'll pause there unless you want to do anything else.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Laura. Really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you making out time for this. I've learned a lot today, right? Just about business process modeling. It has solidified or confirmed a lot of things I know about business process modeling, and I know this will be helpful to many people, right? So if you're listening to this, I'm going to be dropping the link to the course, and you're going to get $100 discount if you register before the 30th of April. Also, I'm going to drop the link to the free business process modeling templates, the business process modeling documentation templates by Laura Brandenburg. I'll be dropping the link here as well. And of course, keep you updated when there are new developments from Bridging the Gap. So thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.